Since the start of his 2024 presidential campaign, Donald has been playing a cat and mouse game with tariffs, of all things. He loves to threaten tariffs, he loves to announce tariffs, but he doesn't seem to be very good at explaining how he's going to implement them. And of course, since last week, whether or not he's going to implement them at all. And getting a straight answer about the future of tariffs, well, that's where things get a little murky.
Cities that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
Well, that's comforting and definitive, may or may not rise. Yeah, that kind of leaves our allies with not much to work with, except now knowing that those are really big tariffs, 25%. Um, it seems like he is not at all sure where this is going, but that's okay, Donald. You do you. You do not have to know anything. We've learned that to our great tragedy over the last 10 years. But during that press conference, he made a startling announcement that finally, on February 1st, he's set to deliver on his promise, something that rarely happens, and roll out a new wave of tariffs, a move that is already causing panic in the markets, outrage from allies, and major concerns from economists. A threefer. Well done, Donald. That is according to the New York Post. Here's the question: who actually stands to lose? Because it's not just Canada or Mexico or China. These tariffs will affect the cost, will affect prices on everything from food to automobiles to electronics, and they could trigger a full blown trade war. Okay, I think that part of this is because Donald likes to make big announcements that gets lot of attention, right? Um, however, however, I hope he has a lot of old bottles of Trump water because bottled water is also probably going to get really expensive. And he's the thirstiest fucking person on the planet. Except, of course, he doesn't drink water. So, Diet Coke then. Buy stock in Diet Coke. That is not a recommendation. Anyway, this is what we know so far. The White House has confirmed that these tariffs are happening Saturday. Take a look.
I was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
The president yesterday said that last night.
Yes, his promise to destroy the American economy is on track. Yeah, did anybody ever put tariffs on the Sacklers products? No, they did not. So here's where Donald's incompetence really comes in. The list of products upon which tariffs are going to be placed keeps changing. His administration at first said all imports, I should say, will be affected. Then only certain goods would be. Economists estimate that the tariffs will cost U.S. households an extra $2,600 a year. But that is a very rough estimate. Why? Because we don't actually know which products will be affected. Right? So, not only that, though, we don't know how much more expensive they're going to get, and we don't know how other countries respond. And that number we know from the Peterson Institute. Donald is acting like he can tax Canada and Mexico directly, but that is not at all how tariffs work. The costs get passed to American businesses and consumers, as Axios said. We're already seeing the economic fallout from this. Markets are tanking as investors panic over the economic stability Donald just triggered, according to AP News. The S&P and NASDAQ just fell sharply, with analysts warning that these tariffs could, quote, destabilize global trade, according to The Guardian. Automakers are scrambling, calculating how much these tariffs will raise car prices. My guess is it will be by a lot. Some estimates say, yes, that thousands of dollars per vehicle will be added because of these tariffs. Retailers are panicking because electronics, appliances, and even sneakers are about to get much more expensive. I think the only thing that might wave Donald off from this insanity, eventually, at any rate, because again, he's looking forward to the spectacle tomorrow, is if the stock market continues to drop. We learned this, those of us who didn't know learned during COVID that the stock market is the only economic indicator he cares about. And it's tied for reasons I don't completely understand to his very, very fragile sense of self-worth. Either that'll kick in or he'll just continue to blame President Biden for everything. Canada and Mexico, our allies, by the way, are already responding. Mexico has taken a calmer approach, at least for now. Earlier this week, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum seemed pretty unconcerned. She even said she doubted these tariffs would happen at all. But now, Mexico is on alert.
Y tenemos plan A, plan B, plan C para lo que decida el gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Ahora es muy importante que sepa el pueblo de México que siempre vamos a defender la dignidad de nuestro pueblo, que siempre vamos a defender el respeto a nuestra soberanía y un diálogo como iguales, como siempre lo hemos mencionado, sin subordinación. Vamos a esperar, como siempre he dicho, con la cabeza fría, tomando las decisiones, estamos preparados y mantenemos este diálogo.
Indeed, when your neighbor to the north and one of your allies suddenly puts somebody in charge of the impulse control of a toddler, you definitely do need a plan A, B, and C. Canada was not amused either, but definitely not reacting with the same calm demeanor as President Sheinbaum. A Canadian MP, Charlie Angus, did not hold back at all.
We represent the incredible regions of our beautiful country, and we are here for one reason. Our nation, our beloved Canada, is under threat. It is an economic threat, but it's also a threat to our values of decency and inclusion. It's a threat to our sovereignty and our very future as a nation. The threat comes, of course, from the President of the United States, a convicted felon and known predator. He's threatening massive tariffs to try and break us as a people. But the threat is also being driven by the hate algorithms of the oligarchs like Elon Musk. And there is the threat from people in our own country who would sell out our birthright to appease the gangster class from Mar-a-Lago. That is not going to happen.
I like that gangster class from Mar-a-Lago. Democrats in office, I hope you're watching. See, Canadians can be polite and friendly and actually know how to fight back. More of that, please. This is what Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau had to say via Twitter earlier today. Quote, "No one on either side of the border wants to see American tariffs on Canadian goods. I met with our Canada-US Council today. We're working hard to prevent these tariffs. But if the United States moves ahead, Canada's ready with a forceful and immediate response." Unquote. Good. This is not something to be taken lightly. This is not a circumstance in which you give Donald any benefit of the doubt. He's finally going to do what he's been saying for years that he's going to do, despite almost everybody except the ignorant fascists in his inner circle. How dangerous this would be to the global economy and to our relationships with our allies. But again, he doesn't care. And he may only care if the stock market continues to tank. So if all of this goes through, many things in the US are about to get much more expensive. 50% of fresh produce in the United States grocery stores comes from Mexico. The new lumber tariffs could cause major housing supply shock. But don't worry, Donald has a solution for your lumber needs.
Mexico and Canada have never been good to us on trade. They've treated us very unfairly on trade. And we will be able to make that up very quickly because we don't need the products that they have. We have all the oil you need. We have all the trees you need, meaning the lumber. We have more than almost anybody in those two categories. In oil, we have more than anybody, and we don't need anybody's trees. We have to free up some of the tree areas that we have. We have great lumber in this country. We have to free them up environmentally, which I can do very quickly. But we don't need what they have. And for us to be subsidizing Canada to the tune of $175 billion a year and subsidizing Mexico to the tune of $250 billion, $300 billion a year. And Mexico is a method of China sending in its product. And with China, I'm also thinking about something because they're sending fentanyl.
Okay. First of all, those numbers are completely wrong. And what is a tree area? Do we not have a word for that? I think it's forest. Anyway, yeah, just more nonsense. And it's sort of funny that he seems to think the only thing Americans need is oil and lumber. Well, who needs food? And besides, if you think inflation was bad before, just wait until you have to take out a loan to buy a lime for that vodka lime soda you're probably going to need pretty soon. Anyway, this is not about protecting American workers. Nothing Donald and his ministry should do is about helping American citizens ever. This is about Donald's creating chaos. There's also got to be a grift in here somewhere. So we're going to keep our eye on that as well. So stay tuned and let's see if the monster actually follows through on a promise for once.